Veronica Calisto and Amy Drayer. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Hello.
Hello. We have got you on because the brand new volume of the RMFW short story anthology just got a big moment, a cover reveal and all that. And we are talking with the, what do you call, co-editors? Is that the right term?
Yes.
Co-editors. Well, and there was also a little bit of news. I think some folks who might have been following the project were not aware that the title of the anthology had changed from the initial point when it started up, when you were asking for folks to submit. Which one of you wants to reveal the name of this production and tell us about that? I guess Veronica's up.
So the title is Bizarre Bazaar, which I mean the original title gave a good theme to the people, and you know, obviously people gave us fantastic stories, but it was definitely one of those like, it's okay, it's just okay kind of feels with it. And so we started kind of throwing around ideas. We were just throwing around words back and forth was kind of how it started.
How long ago was that you switched it up?
A couple months. Yeah, at the right time. And as you know, these anthologies have a life of their own, particularly when you don't go to the authors and say, you know, these are the exact parameters. Here's a theme. Show me what you got. You know, imagine a way. And yeah, I think as we selected the stories and really got to understand the character of the anthology, it wanted to be bolder.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I know you also released the names of all the authors that are going to be included and all that. And we're going to get to that in a minute. I hope you have handy a list. Do either one of you have handy a list of all the short stories that are involved? Great, because I'm going to ask you to read that in a second. But when you talk about Bizarre Bazaar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the word, well, it's Bizarre. Second word, Bazaar, correct?
Correct.
And I think that the idea of a bazaar, you think of the big markets and all that, really fits with an anthology sort of theme. You never know, you might be in this booth and that booth or that stall or that kind of a different experience all the way down the line.
Yeah, I think we were pretty impressed with ourselves when we stumbled on it. As we were brainstorming, it was definitely like, obviously, that's the one we're going to go with. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty funny because we had planned, I think we had a half an hour or an hour just to brainstorm some things. And like, it was 10 minutes in after we did some, hey, like, how you doing with life or whatever, and then we're like, wait, did we just do that? Like,
when it's right, it's right.
Yeah,
that's great. And talk a little bit about then developing a cover around that. Tell us who you went to, and was that something that took a few iterations to get to, and to a point you were happy?
We were super lucky. I had been emailing the RMFW board about just the anthology updates and saying, you know, at this point, we're going to start looking for volunteers for, layout, for the cover, for this, for that. And Kim Malik stepped up, and her husband, Patrick Malik, is a designer, and he graciously agreed to donate his time for it and put together actually a few different comps. And we had initially chosen a different cover when we were kind of still with the Renew. And when we moved to Bizarre Bazaar, the cover that we had chosen for Renew didn't fit anymore. It was a beautiful cover, beautiful work. We were really excited about it. but realized one of the other comps that he had put together for us was a better fit. And so we went back to Patrick, and he again was incredibly gracious and said, yeah, absolutely. Let me go ahead and tweak this and make it pop and adjust the colors, and then came back to us with a really, really fun cover. It just, to me, speaks to the stories all the way down the line. It's eccentric, it leads you in different directions. It piques your interest, and there's always something new around every corner. And I think he just captured that perfectly.
That's great. Veronica, you were happy with the cover as well?
Yeah, I was definitely happy with the cover. And it was the artist mentioned that the new title sparked things in his head, which is exciting because it's, it sparked things in our head too. So it was definitely one of those things. Clearly the title needed to change to embrace the collection that we had, and then that inspired him, and everything came together beautifully.
That's great. So does one of you want to read the list of authors and the title of their story?
I've got it up, Veronica, unless you have it up.
I do not have it up, so go for it.
I'm on deck. Here we go. Kelly Lindbergh, Beauty and Stasis. Doug Christie, Going Postal. Natasha Watts, Daughters of Velamo. Rick Duffy, Something in the Air. John Campbell, Racing the Marineris. Francilia Belton, Red Riding in the Hood. Jill English Johnston, The Peddler and the Goat Herdess. BJ Erdley, The Three Varkin Sisters. Vista McDowell, The Clay Bride. Mel Lake, The Diagnostic Demon on Skillman Avenue. Allison Thayer, The Baby Bargain. L.V. Ditchkis, Opera Without Arias. Eleanor Shelton, The Suit. Rachel Delaney Kraft, We Are Celia. Sipa Onion, Do Over. K.L. Ment, Cheap Plastic Crap. And Jenny McDonald, The Emperor's New Shoes. Wow. And that's not necessarily the order of appearance. That is the order of the Google document. And sorting, I will have to say, Veronica, I actually don't know if this is the first anthology you've put together, but this is the first anthology that I've put together. And figuring out the story order was equally, I thought, in many ways, as difficult as choosing the stories.
Agreed. Yeah, this is also my first anthology that I put together. And I was talking to a friend who's done many anthologies, Jonathan Mayberry, and I was like, how do you do those things? Getting some pointers on that, which was helpful. But I think the benefit of not being alone was great, because you had someone, different viewpoints to kind of bounce off of, with the story choice. And then when you're choosing the order, there's definitely second guessing, because you're like, oh my gosh, I love all of these things. And they're, you've got horror, you've got contemporary, you've got all these different genres, and figuring out how to put them together to give each of them a good highlight. And, it was definitely interesting. But we put definitely some time into figuring the order.
What was the key to unlock the approach you were going to take in terms of sequencing? What was the philosophy in the end, do you think?
If I remember right, because there are so many genres represented in the anthology, the first order of business was very practical in making sure that we didn't pile up the genres. And that helped. That practical first step was very helpful. And then I think it was a matter of going back and forth and really talking with each other and understanding the feel of each story. You know, how did you feel entering the story after reading the last story? And then as you left that story, how would you feel going into the next story? So it was a matter of feel, it was a matter of pacing, it was a matter of balance. And the feel of the stories, not only are the genres very different, but the language, of course, is very different. Some of them, you know, work with very rich, complex language, and some of them are just freaking hilarious. Some of them are just otherworldly sci-fi. And, you know, so I think we just really had to examine, go deep, and have a really strong working knowledge of the stories themselves, and really try to get at the heart of the stories and know these stories, and then kind of go back and forth and you know, go from there.
Yeah.
Anything else, Veronica, on that?
Yeah, definitely what Amy was saying. And, you know, recognizing, okay, like, you know, this one's a sci-fi and this one's a horror, but they're both very dark. We need something that's not dark next to it, and, you know, say it's a contemporary or something like that. So definitely balancing, because you don't want to get to a point where like everything's drudgery, in, you know, any kind of thing. And so, yeah, very much the themes, the feels, the language, all of that, trying to give good lead in from one story to the other, and also, you know, just spread it out and let everything shine.
Yeah, and I will say, I won't say that I've never loved someone else's story more than I've loved my own work, but I've never been so invested in other folks' stories as I have been through this experience. And, you know, really, I think it's a testament to the writers that, you know, I just was so drawn into these stories and kept finding new things, and am continually delighted to go back and work with the stories after rounds of edits and story placement. You know, I want to bring these stories to the world, and hope folks find as much delight in them as we did.
That's great. So I think I counted about 14, maybe 15 stories as you were going down the line, somewhere in there.
I hope there were 17.
How many in all?
17.
17? Amy's counting. 1, 2,
Weird.
There were indeed 17. Yes.
Okay.
17, okay.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure there were 17, because we
Yes.
when we put the things
I'm
together.
not a math major, okay? You got up past 12 and I was lost.
Suspense. You know how to generate suspense, Mark. That is a true gift in a writer.
Yeah. So how many other stories applied? How many other were in the pool initially, roughly?
Gosh, I'm going to go with about 70.
Wow.
I think between 60 and 70. There were quite a few. I think lower than in previous years. You know, we did this call very early in the pandemic, and you know, the classic, I think now, writer story of the pandemic is that everyone is like, oh, you must be so excited, you have all the time in the world to write. And for some folks that was true, and man, the productivity was just there. But I think for a lot of folks, you know, like artists don't exist in a vacuum, and, you know, we are very empathetic creatures. And, you know, so asking for these stories of renewal and rejuvenation and, you know, reworkings was, I think, a big lift for folks. So I was thrilled that, you know, we got as many entries as we did.
But a lot of work, Veronica, to go through and decide what was going to make the final cut.
Yeah, and, you know, inevitably when you're reading any group of stories, there's some that you're just like, wow, this thing is amazing, and then there are other things that are amazing in not the greatest ways. And when you read a bunch that you're like, this is not, it doesn't fit the theme, or like the grammar made this hard to read, or there can be a little bit of disheartening, and then you find the ones that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so like, oh, I'm gonna give all of the points, like throw glitter on this one because I love it. Is definitely, and that's the thing that gets you through. I've definitely done some judging for Rocky Mountain Fiction Writer contest, and actually a few contests. So I've gotten to do a lot of those critical looking at other people's stories and finding the ones that are beautiful is really the thing that pulls you in.
That's great. Of the ones that made the final cut, then talk a little bit about the process you went through with each writer. I assume you went back and forth with a little editing process with each writer as well, and maybe some needed more work than others. Did you have like a 2 or 3 round process? Or just did it kind of depend on each story?
I think it was mostly 2, and on 1 or 2, it was a 3. I will say that the stories we settled on mostly just came in whole and beautiful. And then there were a couple where I think we saw even more in the story than the author even realized was there. And we asked them, we said, I think we see more here. Can you go for it? We love this story. We want to include it. Here's what else we see. Show us what else you might see in the story. And I feel rewarded for when we asked for that. I feel like the authors just stepped up and said, oh, wow, absolutely. Here you go. And just some of them that were, oh, hello, that we're dog sitting. That's Rex. And so, some of them were just a matter of tweaking. It was a beautiful story. And it was like, what if we did this? And, the authors, for the most part, said, oh, yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, definitely. Most of the editing was asking questions. Like, what did you mean here? Like, if this is the case here, what's going on here? Just asking those questions. And the authors they're like, I didn't even think about that. And then their brains exploded in the good ways. So
yeah. And as an author on the other side of the coin, it's so amazing when someone sees something in your work that you didn't even know was there and says, hey, let's dig in a little bit more on that. It's delightful, right? That someone else really is invested in what you're trying to say and what you're trying to illuminate, and helps you, either helps, I don't know if help is the right word, but sort of guides you in shading, adding all of those tones of shading.
Yeah. I want to ask each of you just how going through this process has helped your own writing, and maybe just I'll ask that question first, and then I'm going to ask you each to just give us an update on what's happening with your own individual projects. But Veronica, for starters, what did going through, as you look back on this whole process and how many, I can't even imagine, hundreds of hours you must have put into it, did it change any way or make you approach your own craft a little differently? Maybe not. That's fine. I'm just curious.
Inevitably, when you're looking at other people's stories critically, and if you're doing it in the right way, not just to tear people down, because there are definitely those kinds of people in the world, but when you're looking critically to, like, polish the stone, as it were, you find the things that you do too often badly, not well. You find your own issues, and those are the ones that you poke at the most quickly, and then you're like, oh crap, I need to stop doing that. So it's anytime editing someone else's story, I find my writing increases in clarity, or in any of those any of those things. It's definitely it turns the mirror on yourself.
Yeah. Before we get to Amy, was there sometimes when I've judged or I've never edited an anthology, but mostly when I've judged or read a book or something and you spot a new technique or something that somebody did that's just so amazing and you kind of store it away. Did that happen to you at all?
Yeah, there are some stories that are creepy in beautiful ways, like beautiful, subtle ways that like slowly like crawl up on you, and some that you assume are going to be dark and somehow manage to twist into beautiful and uplifting, and you're just awed by how they did that. And I kind of want to shake the shoulders of a couple of people, be like, this is so good. So there's a couple things that stick out in my head from a couple of the stories that I like I said, frankly, I want to speak to the authors themselves and say, where did you pull this out of your brain, you beautiful human? So.
And before we get to Amy, one little interim question here, which I forgot to ask. As you selected the stories that would go in the volume, did you know the author's name at that point, or was that all blind up until? That was all blind.
It was blind.
Yeah.
So yeah. It was nice, after things had been picked and, we were going toward the editing part. I was like, wait, I know some of these names. This is exciting.
Yeah, that's great. And in some cases you likely knew the person, maybe it made sense to you at that point and you could, connect a little bit differently. Oh, that's an interesting, I didn't think that person would be behind that, or that really makes sense that writer is behind that story.
A little bit. I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because inevitably the people who write the creepy stories are the cutest, most lovable people. Just like
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
you don't judge a writer by the smile, that's for sure.
That's absolutely for sure.
Amy, what about you? And I'm going to ask also, because you were part of an anthology process that I was involved in as well, the Denver Noir series. And so that got published as you were coming down the home stretch of editing this one. So it must have been interesting for you to watch your own story get edited as part of a well-known series, a national publication, Akashic Books, and then also kind of apply some of the things you might have seen in that process. And maybe you were bringing Veronica in on that as well. I don't know, but what was the experience like for you, and did it change your approach to your writing?
Mm-hmm, sure. And it definitely was helpful and helped with my writing and helped me remember some things that are important. But, I do want to say before I kind of get into that, I do want to shout out to Cynthia Swanson and the work that she did editing Denver Noir, and just how inspirational, how hard she worked, how insightful she was, how much time she gave the project, how professional she's been. Really just a model for me. In terms of how I wanted to be an editor for an anthology and how I wanted to be for the authors, what I wanted to give to the book. And so I feel very grateful to be a part of that process. And, I've as I've done critique, I really agree with, Veronica, that, what you're looking for in any story is it once you move into that editing mode or critique mode is, you're looking for the beauty. You find that moment of beauty and then you say, let's go. That's where you start as a critique person or an editor, is you find what grabs you, what's beautiful, what you feel like was that bolt of lightning for the author. That's your job as a critique person or an editor is to find that magic and bring it out. That's it, you know, and then let the author go from there. But I feel, you know, as Veronica's, you know, sort of saying like the stories that you wanted to throw glitter on, to me, what this reminded me of as a writer is that the stories that we ended up with were the ones that just right away grabbed you. The voice was just there. It was distinctive. It was clear. You knew that the author had something exactly that they wanted to say, and nothing was going to get in the way of them saying that. That the characters had a purpose, had a voice, were distinct. And, you know, it's just there, you know, within the first paragraph, you know, and sometimes that didn't prove out. Sometimes technically it didn't prove out, but the ones that technically proved out and coincided with the ones where that voice was just there. You were ready to go with this person. And I think as an author, it's really easy to get in your head. And I did Lighthouse Writers Workshop, and man, that'll put you in your head faster than anything else out there, you know? And it's so easy to get lost in, you know, what's my stance in this story? And am I really in the right, you know, person? Should this be third person? Or, you know, like, it's so easy to get up there and get high-minded about it. And really, you know, people just want to go on a journey with a character who has a journey to go on, you know, who has something to say, is gonna say it, is gonna take you somewhere. And I think, you know, all of these stories jump out because they are just, you just want to go and see where these folks are going. They hook you, they take you right through, they go in a million different directions. And I think that was a really good reminder is, you know, write the story that your character needs to tell.
Very, very good. It's nice of you to say nice things about Lighthouse Writers, but I'm sure you meant that nothing gets you there faster than Lighthouse Writers or a good workshop at RMFW.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, what I was saying about Lighthouse is, man, it'll get you in your head. Like it gets in your head, and you just, that, you know, that inner critic, it just fires full time. And, you know, they do a great job of sort of like talking you down from that. But what I appreciate about, thank you, RMFW, is the love of story. Man, if that could be, you know, I know that's not the tagline, but it could be the tagline, for the love of story. Anyone can write a story. Everyone should write a story, and stories are beautiful.
Amen. Amen. So let's get a little update from each of you just on what you're working on now, and anything that's kind of newsy in your writing world, maybe starting with Veronica.
I recently have been doing a little bit more reading than writing. I was one of the weird ones during pandemic, especially the quarantine. I wrote 4 books in 2020, which it's not to say I was in a great place in the head. It was just, this is the thing I can do to stop from going to the bad place, further into the bad place. So definitely some like pulling back from writing that much, and, you know, editing some of those things. I did write a short story and a flash that I submitted for Pikes Peak, their anthology. I'm like, it'd be nice to be on the other side. So, and, you know, right now just trying to figure out where I want to go as far as writing next, but also like enjoying the input of story right now.
Yeah. Do you feel a little more inspired coming off this project? Or I know you've probably always been fairly energetic with your, I assume that based on what little I know about you in terms of just, seems like you're actively engaged and all that.
I do tend to have like, you know, 50,000 things in my head. Right now they're all disjointed and going in different directions, and I just need to give time for them to, like, you know, congeal in some way. So I'm like, all right, well, you do that. I'll, you know, maybe piddle some words here and there, and you know, just read and watch some things that center me, I've been to movies in the theater recently,
Wow.
which I
Wow.
know.
What is it? What's a theater? What is that?
It's this place where more than just the people in a house go.
What? Do tell.
Sounds terrifying.
I mean, it's a little bit like, it helps if you bring like your rating party with you. You're like, okay, we can do this. So yeah, I think a lot of input of story, and right now trying to figure out what it is to live life, maybe not the same as pre-pandemic, because obviously some of the practices of pre-pandemic led to deepening of pandemic, but just, you know, figuring out what life is. And I'm also helping out with some things for superstars writing seminars as well. So kind of
What's that?
Superstars Writing Seminars. It is a conference that happens in February in Colorado Springs, and it is focused on the business of writing. And currently, currently the scholarships are open for applying to, which that is what I'm helping out with, the scholarships. So
Is there a website? We could.
There is a website for that. And if you will give me a moment, I can give it to you.
We'll talk with Amy for a second, and then you take your time. So Amy, give us an update on your writing. Have you been just too busy absorbed with this? My hunch is no. You also have some other writing news.
Yeah, I've been, well, this summer I was working on a radio play that is part of a series. I had a very homage to old time radio mystery theater that was produced last summer, called Penny Tahlequah and the Miss Olsen Incident. And it really was a throwback. I got together with a friend who is a theater director and a local radio station, and put together this great cast of local actors. And I really just fell in love, A, with the characters, B, with this radio play concept. It's something that I've loved for a long time. And so was working on developing that. I did the Denver Noir, and I'm really embracing short stories right now. I have a second novel in a series that is just on the shelf. And man, Joe, I'm so sorry. Your story is wonderful, and it's going to tell me how it needs to be soon. But as I wait and work and wonder, this radio play, it's obviously totally dialogue driven. There is no interiority. There is no scene. There is, it's dialogue. And so it moves very quickly, and it's challenging in a different way. Unfortunately, I had a life event, an unpredictable life event. So it just kind of destroyed 3 weeks of my summer. I was totally out of pocket. I was like hot in the middle of this radio play, and just was taken away from any kind of writing for about 3 weeks. And so I'm trying to get my head back in the game on that radio play. Get the, keep this anthology moving along. So I think the radio play is my next goal. And then I really would love to get that novel that is all but the ending done. Get that shipped, man. Get that project shipped.
Good. Excellent. Yes, life gets in the way occasionally, doesn't it? Just it is what it is. Yep.
Life.
Very good. Any luck, Veronica?
Yes, I was trying to see if there was a specific website to the scholarship itself. There is not, but it's at the top of the front page of the website. So it's superstarswriting.com.
Great.
And yeah, it's in February. I don't know who the guest authors are, because I didn't actually look. I was looking for scholarship stuff, but tends to be, Jonathan Mayberry, Jim Butcher, Kevin J. Anderson, those kinds of people tend to be the ones who are like the general staff. And then I'm not entirely certain who is coming as
Okay.
the big guests, but yeah, they do a lot of good seminars on business of writing. I know last year they had people from draft to digital, which if you're an indie writer, you should be aware of and in touch with. And so, yeah, good stuff.
So back to Bizarre Bazaar, is this the timing on the release on this? Is this again being timed with Colorado Gold? That's been the pattern.
Yeah, there will be a panel at Colorado Gold and Veronica is going to be moderating that panel with some of our authors. And then we are working with tentatively, I think we're pretty much ready, but September 7th, we're looking to do a launch event at Barnes & Noble in Glendale, and open to the public, open to all of our authors. So that'll be kind of our official kickoff event. And then the book should drop on September 1st, kickoff event September 7th. And then we are awaiting placement for our panel at the Colorado Gold Conference.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, congratulations, you two. Congratulations on landing the plane. This is terrific.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know
We're in
when we've got it in our
mid-landing.
hot little hands, right?
Yeah. The wheels are down. You can see the runway, but maybe you haven't landed the plane yet.
Yeah. And I mean, I am, just because both of us are, first-time anthology editors. And I think that's, my first placement, my first short story placement was in an RMFW anthology. My first critique workshopping experiences, this experience, for me, RMFW has been exactly what the mission is, which is, moving me from an aspiring writer to a published author, and developing that writing community. And so I'm super grateful to RMFW, but also to the previous anthology editors. Just the volume of learning that I have done through the previous editors, and RMFW is fantastic. And I'm so appreciative of that.
Yeah, it's great. Excellent. Well, I did not remind you that we wrap up with a question of promoting one other author or book from each of you, just to kind of pay it forward a little bit. Love to get your recommendation, something you've read recently, or just an all-time favorite, something you just want to give a little bit of a lift to. So Veronica, maybe we'll start with you if you've got a title or an author handy.
Author handy, yes. I would grab one of the hats, but probably my background would make the hat not visible.
Speaking of which, just before we get to that, we should probably say something about your background. Either you have an outdoor sculpture museum at your house, or this is a slide you dropped in, but we should probably acknowledge that
the giant babies with weird faces. When I was on a trip to Europe, there was giant babies with weird faces, and I'm like, I obviously need a picture of this. And it entertains me every time I open Zoom. So
yeah, I can guarantee you it's the first time we've had a I don't know if that's bronze buttocks. I know first time we've had bronze buttocks on the video in a RMFW podcast. So thanks for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got the buttocks, like I said, like their faces are like weird, punched out. I don't know. I needed a picture.
Yeah. And the dumpster's a nice touch too.
Yeah, well, class is
Anyway, back to the book.
Back to the book. The author, David R. Slayton, who is an RMFW author. His first book, White Trash Warlock, debuted middle of the pandemic. It was scheduled and the world fell apart. So he didn't get to do quite the touring and things that he had planned and anticipated. So and it's a great book. The main character, like him in many ways, grew up in Oklahoma, comes to Denver, so most of it takes place in Denver, so there's always that fun for people who've been here. And the third book, the first one is White Trash Warlock, the second one is
Trailer Park Trickster. Trailer Park Trickster. The third one, which is Deadbeat Druid, comes out in October of this year. So that's great. Excellent. Amy, how about you?
Sure. I would love to give a shout out to a fellow sister in crime. One of the other organizations that I love being a part of that's so supportive is Sisters in Crime. And Becky Clark did the interior layout for Bizarre Bazaar and did a magnificent job with it. So smooth. So grateful to her for how smooth the process was. But as an author, I love Becky because her mysteries are witty, clever, fun. The mystery is always there. It's always solid. It is just, you can always just pick it up and enjoy reading a book. You know, it's just always there. And she has a couple of different series. She also has a nonfiction, you know, how to write a novel in 8 weeks. And she's just an enormous resource for our community, in addition to being a hilariously fun author and a guaranteed great read.
And just a delightful person. Let's be real.
Let's be real. She is an absolute delight from the first moment of the day to the last. She is amazing. Yep. Always on her game. Amy and Veronica, thank you both so much for this. Thank you for all you do for RMFW. Thanks for pulling the anthology together. And thanks for this great conversation today, and wish you luck with the final steps in getting this baby out in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for all of your work. Dun, baby.
I chose the wrong word.
No, it's quite good. It's apropos.
Yeah.